So my name is Jasmine and I did case 3B, FMS Securities Valuation. So question 1 is asking for the nominal expected rate and the effective annual rate of return. To find this, I first used the information given to calculate annual dividends. So I multiplied $100 by 4.32% to get $4.32. For quarterly dividends, I divided the annual dividends by 4 to get $1.08. And then the quarterly return, I divided $1.08 by $48 to get 2.25%. I then used this information to get the nominal rate of return. So I used the 2.25% and I multiplied that by 4 to get 9%. And then for the effective annual rate of return, I added 1 plus 2.25% to the fourth power and I subtracted 1 to get a 9.31%. So question 2 is asking for the expected rate of return at the beginning of 2003 with the given information. So to calculate this, you would first divide dividend price of $1.80 by price per share, so $22.26, then adding the growth rate of 6% to get 14.09%. So for question 2B is asking for the expected dividend yield and capital gains yield on January 1st, 2003 using this information. So to calculate the dividend yield, you must first divide dividend of $1.80 by the price per share of $22.26 to get 8.09%. Then to find capital gains, you would subtract the price, so $14.86 by the expected dividend yield to get 6%. So question 3, this was asking what conditions you must hold to use the constant growth rate and if real-world stocks satisfy the constant growth assumption. So in order to use the constant growth assumption, a modeled company must meet the conditions that dividends per share and payout dividends must remain at a constant rate. And so a majority of the time, real stocks can't satisfy this constant growth assumption because annual earnings may differ over the years. So for question 4. So on question 4, I had to find the stock price value market with a required rate return of 13.5%. So what I did is I used the dividends at a growth rate of 6% till I got to year 6. I then changed that to 7.5% and calculated the future cash flows. Then used the future cash flows and the required rate of return to calculate the PV of future cash flows. I then summed those up to get the stock value on January 1st, 2013 of $28.56. I did the same steps in this question for number 5, except I'm assuming that the stock is in equilibrium. And then so I got the sum of the PVs of future cash flows. So the stock value on January 1st, 2004 is 30.62%. What is the expected stock price at the end of 2004, assuming that the stock is in equilibrium? So for this one, I used the 6% growth rate until year 2008. Then I switched it to the 7.5%. So the stock value on January 1st, 2005 comes out to $32.85. So 6, what is the expected dividend yield and capital gain yields and total returns for 2003? So for this, I used the information given and I used the dividends in 2003. I divided that by price of share on January 1st, and I got a 1.80. For capital gains, I used price 1, and I subtracted it by price 2, then divided it by price to get a total of 7.20%. Then I added dividend yield and capital gains yield to get the total return for 2003 of 13.50%. So for question 7, I used the same steps. The only difference was that I kept the growth rate at 0% and I used this to calculate the future cash flows. So once I got the present value of the future cash flows, I summed those up to get a stock value of $19.76. So for question 8, it was asking what the stock price was at the beginning of 2003 using the growth rates given in the introduction question. And it asks for what's the stock's expected rate of return. So to get the expected rate of return, what I did is I used the D1 price and I divided that by stock price, and then I added the growth rate to get 14.58%. So for question 9, this question asked if based on the information given in the value line tables, if a 6% growth rate is sustainable. So for this one, I calculated the growth rate. So to calculate the growth rate, I got the annual dividends and I subtracted the previous year dividends, and then I divided that by annual dividends to get each year's growth rate. Once I found each growth rate for each year, I got the average of that, and the average was 7.33. So 7.33 is greater than 6%. So the trend was that annual dividends was increasing at a constant rate of 0.1 over the years, causing the growth rate to decrease. And a 6% growth rate is not reasonable with this information given. So question 9. Question 9 was asking for if with the given values, figures can support a 7.5 growth rate. So I used the information provided to calculate the retention ratio with the formula 1 minus dividends per share divided by earnings per share to get 31.82%. I then used this number to multiply it by the ROE to get the growth rate of 5.09%, which means the figures provided cannot support a higher growth rate of 7.5%.